The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as 12-year-old Marcus adjusted his worn leather bag one more time. Today was different from all the other days he had spent begging near the royal gates. Today, something in the air felt electric, charged with possibility and danger. Marcus had been living on the streets of the capital city for 3 years now, ever since his mother died from the fever that swept through the poor districts. His father, a blacksmith, had disappeared one night, leaving behind only debts and broken promises. The boy had learned to survive by his wits, picking pockets when desperate, begging when pride allowed, and always watching. He knew the routines of everyone who mattered in this part of the city. The baker who threw out day-old bread at exactly 10 in the morning, the merchant's wife who always dropped a coin or two when she saw children with hungry eyes, the royal guards who changed shifts every 4 hours, their heavy boots echoing against the cobblestones in perfect rhythm. But most importantly, he knew about Captain Sir Edmund Blackthorne, the head of the royal guard. The man was a legend among the common people, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Stories said he had saved the king's life 7 times, fought in 12 major battles, and never once failed in his duty. To the street children, he was both feared and respected. Feared because he never tolerated theft or troublemaking near the palace. Respected because, unlike other nobles, he treated even the poorest citizens with dignity. Marcus had observed Captain Blackthorne for months, noting how the man walked the same route every morning at dawn, inspecting the guards, checking the gates, ensuring everything was perfect for another day of protecting the royal family. The captain's sword never left his side, its silver handle worn smooth from years of use. His uniform was always spotless, his manner always professional. On this particular morning, Marcus noticed something unusual. A group of well-dressed men had been loitering near the east gate for the past hour. They weren't merchants, their clothes were too fine, their manner too watchful. They weren't nobles either. They lacked the easy confidence that came with royal blood. Marcus's street-smart instincts told him these men were trouble. The boy positioned himself closer to the main courtyard, pretending to search through a pile of discarded vegetables. From this vantage point, he could see both the suspicious strangers and Captain Blackthorne, who was now making his regular morning rounds. The captain emerged from the guardhouse, his presence immediately commanding attention from every soldier in sight. He moved with the fluid grace of a man who had spent decades training his body to be a weapon. His inspection was thorough but efficient, checking each guard's posture, examining their weapons, asking brief questions about the night's events. Marcus watched as one of the suspicious men near the east gate reached inside his coat. The movement was subtle, practiced, but the boy's sharp eyes caught the glint of metal. A blade. Not the ceremonial kind that nobles wore for show, but the kind meant for killing. The pieces fell into place in Marcus's mind with terrifying clarity. These weren't random troublemakers or common thieves. They were assassins, positioned and ready. Captain Blackthorne, focused on his duties and trusting in the security of his own domain, was walking directly into their trap. The boy's heart hammered against his ribs. He could run away, disappear into the maze of streets he knew so well, and pretend he had seen nothing. That would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. Street children who interfered in the affairs of powerful people rarely lived to tell about it. But something deep inside Marcus rebelled against the idea of watching a good man die. Captain Blackthorne had never harmed him, had even occasionally nodded respectfully when their paths crossed. More than that, the captain represented something Marcus desperately wanted to believe in, the idea that honor and duty still mattered in a world that seemed designed to crush people like him. The assassins were moving now, spreading out in a pattern that would surround the captain. Their leader, a thin man with cold eyes, was already reaching for his concealed weapon. Captain Blackthorne, still several yards away, remained unaware of the danger closing in around him. Marcus made his decision in that split second, knowing it might be the last choice he ever made. He couldn't shout a warning. The assassins would simply kill him and continue with their plan. He couldn't run to the guards, they were too far away, and by the time he reached them it would be too late. Instead, the boy did something completely unexpected, something that went against every survival instinct he had developed during his years on the streets. He sprinted directly toward Captain Blackthorne, his small legs carrying him as fast as they could across the courtyard. The lead assassin saw the movement and hesitated for just a moment, confused by the appearance of a street child in the middle of what should have been a perfectly executed ambush. That moment of confusion was exactly what Marcus was counting on. "Captain," the boy screamed at the top of his lungs, his voice cracking with fear and determination. "Behind you, knives!" The warning came just as the first assassin lunged forward, his blade aimed at Captain Blackthorn's back. The captain, trained by decades of combat experience, reacted instantly to the boy's cry. He spun around, his own sword clearing its sheath in one fluid motion just in time to parry the deadly strike. The courtyard erupted into chaos as the other guards realized what was happening. Shouts filled the air, boots pounded against stone, and the ring of steel against steel echoed off the palace walls. But in that crucial moment when everything balanced on the edge of a knife, it was a 12-year-old street orphan who had made the difference between life and death for one of the kingdom's greatest heroes. Steel rang against steel as Captain Blackthorn engaged the first assassin, their blades locked in deadly combat. The captain's experience showed immediately. His movements were precise, controlled, while his attacker fought with desperate fury. But numbers were not in the captain's favor, and the other assassins were already moving to surround him. Marcus pressed himself against a stone pillar, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He had done what he could, but now he could only watch as the battle unfolded. The royal guards were rushing toward the fight, but they seemed impossibly far away. The thin-faced leader of the assassins barked orders to his men in a language Marcus didn't recognize. Two more killers closed in on Captain Blackthorn from opposite sides, their curved daggers gleaming in the morning light. The captain was skilled, but even he couldn't fight three trained killers at once. Just when it seemed the captain would be overwhelmed, something unexpected happened. The lead assassin suddenly stumbled, crying out in pain as he clutched his leg. A small throwing knife protruded from his thigh, thrown with perfect accuracy by one of the approaching royal guards. Sergeant William Hayes, the captain's second in command, had always been known for his exceptional aim with throwing weapons. The momentary distraction gave Captain Blackthorn the opening he needed. His sword found its mark, and the first assassin fell to the cobblestones, his weapon clattering away. "Protect the palace," Captain Blackthorn shouted to his men, even as he parried another attack. "Seal the gates! No one enters or leaves." The remaining assassins realized their carefully planned ambush had turned into a trap for themselves. The palace guards were now streaming into the courtyard from all directions, their armor gleaming, weapons drawn. The element of surprise was gone, and with it their best chance of escape. Marcus watched in fascination as the battle turned. These weren't common street thugs. Both sides fought with skill and training that spoke of years of preparation. The assassins moved like shadows, their black clothing helping them blend with the darker corners of the courtyard. But the royal guards fought as a unit, each man knowing exactly where his comrades were. Their coordination perfect. The thin-faced leader, still bleeding from the knife wound in his leg, made a desperate decision. Instead of fighting his way toward the gates, he turned and ran directly toward the palace entrance. Marcus realized with horror what the man was planning. If he couldn't kill Captain Blackthorn, he would try to reach the royal family inside. "He's going for the palace," Marcus screamed, pointing at the fleeing assassin. Captain Blackthorn heard the warning and immediately abandoned his current fight, leaving his men to handle the remaining killers. The captain's long legs carried him swiftly across the courtyard in pursuit of the leader. But the assassin had a head start. The fleeing man reached the palace steps and bounded up them three at a time, his wound forgotten in his desperation. He burst through the main doors, which should have been guarded but weren't. The door guards had rushed outside when they heard the sounds of battle. Marcus found himself running again, following Captain Blackthorn into the palace itself. He knew he had no business being there, but something compelled him forward. Perhaps it was the same instinct that had made him shout the first warning. Or perhaps he simply couldn't bear to let the story end without knowing how it concluded. The palace interior was a maze of marble corridors, magnificent tapestries and priceless artwork. Marcus had never seen such luxury, but he barely noticed it as he ran. Somewhere ahead he could hear the sound of running footsteps and shouted orders. Captain Blackthorn's voice echoed through the halls. "Alert the king. Secure the royal chambers. All guards to defensive positions." The assassin leader was clever, Marcus had to admit. Instead of heading directly for the royal quarters, where he would certainly encounter the heaviest security, he had taken a more circuitous route. The man clearly knew the palace layout, which suggested this attack had been planned for months. Perhaps years. Marcus, being small and quick, managed to keep pace with Captain Blackthorne through the twisting corridors. The captain's armor clinked with each step, but he moved with surprising speed for a man carrying so much metal. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with a group of palace servants who were fleeing in panic. A young maid pointed down a side corridor. "He went that way, my lord." "Toward the Queen's garden." Captain Blackthorne cursed under his breath. The Queen's garden was connected to the royal family's private quarters by a series of hidden passages that most guards didn't even know about. If the assassin reached those passages, he could strike at the heart of the royal family before anyone could stop him. The captain pushed himself to run faster, his breath coming in controlled gasps. Behind them, Marcus could hear more guards arriving, but they were still too far away to help if the assassin reached his target first. They burst into the Queen's garden, a beautiful space filled with exotic flowers and carefully maintained paths. But the beauty was lost on Marcus as he saw the assassin leader standing near a fountain, no longer running. The man had turned to face them, his remaining daggers in his hands, a cruel smile on his thin face. "Captain Edmund Blackthorne," the assassin said, his accent now clearly foreign, "the legendary guardian of the crown. Do you know how long we have planned for this moment?" "Long enough to fail spectacularly," the captain replied, raising his sword. "Your men are dead or captured. Your mission has failed." The assassin's smile widened. "Has it? You assume I came here to kill you or the royal family. But what if my real target was something else entirely?" Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in the man's tone, a confidence that suggested they were still missing something important. The boy's eyes darted around the garden looking for clues, for anything that might explain the assassin's words. That's when he saw it, a small device attached to the base of the fountain, something that definitely didn't belong in a royal garden. It was metallic with what looked like a clockwork mechanism, and it was ticking. "Captain, the fountain!" Marcus shouted, pointing at the strange device. The ticking sound was growing louder, more urgent, and small wisps of smoke were beginning to curl from its metal casing. Captain Blackthorne's eyes snapped to the device, and his face went pale. In his years of military service, he had seen enough battlefield explosives to recognize one when he saw it. This wasn't just an assassination attempt, it was something far worse. The assassin laughed, a cold sound that echoed off the garden walls. "Too late, Captain. In less than 2 minutes, that device will destroy not just this garden but half the royal wing. The explosion will be heard for miles, and the kingdom will know that even their precious palace isn't safe." "Why?" Captain Blackthorne demanded, even as he moved closer to examine the device. "What do you gain from this madness?" "Fear," the assassin replied simply. "Fear weakens kingdoms. Fear makes people doubt their leaders, and doubt makes them easier to conquer." Marcus crept closer to the fountain, his street-trained eyes studying the strange contraption. He had never seen anything like it before, but he had spent years watching craftsmen work in the city's workshops. This device had gears, springs, and what looked like small barrels of black powder. Most importantly, it had wires connecting different components. "Captain," Marcus whispered, "I think I can see how it works. Those wires, if we cut them maybe. Don't touch anything," the captain commanded sharply. One wrong move could set it off immediately. The assassin was backing toward one of the garden's exits, clearly planning to escape while the captain was distracted by the bomb. But Captain Blackthorne was not a man who could be easily fooled. With lightning speed, he drew a small throwing dagger from his belt and sent it spinning through the air. The blade caught the assassin in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a rose bush. "Now," the captain muttered, kneeling beside the device, "let's see what we're dealing with." The mechanism was more complex than anything Marcus had ever seen. There were multiple timers, backup triggers, and what appeared to be pressure plates designed to prevent tampering. Whoever had built this device was a master craftsman with a deep understanding of both engineering and destruction. 1 minute. 30 seconds, Captain Blackthorne said grimly, reading the largest timer. "Even if I could disarm this, I don't have the tools or the knowledge." Marcus studied the device more carefully, his young mind working through the problem from a different angle. He had learned to think creatively during his years on the streets. When you had nothing, you had to find solutions that others might miss. "Captain, what if we don't try to stop it? What if we move it instead?" Move it. Boy, this thing weighs more than you do, and any rough handling could trigger it early. But Marcus was already looking around the garden, his eyes settling on a large wheelbarrow that the gardeners used to move soil and plants. It was sturdy, well-balanced, and, most importantly, it was designed to carry heavy loads smoothly. The gardener's cart, Marcus said excitedly. We could roll it away from the palace toward the outer walls. If it explodes there. Captain Blackthorn's eyes lit up with understanding. The outer walls were thick stone, designed to withstand siege weapons. More importantly, that area of the palace was used only for storage and guard quarters. It was evacuated during the morning shift change. It might work, the captain said, but we'd have to be incredibly careful. One bump, one wrong move, I can do it, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. I'm small, I'm quick, and I know how to move quietly. I've been sneaking around this city my whole life. The wounded assassin, still tangled in the rose bush, let out a harsh laugh. You're both fools. Even if you move it, the explosion will still damage the palace. The psychological effect will be the same. People will know that their king couldn't protect his own home. Captain Blackthorn ignored the man's taunts and helped Marcus carefully lift the device into the wheelbarrow. The bomb was heavier than it looked, and every small movement made its internal mechanisms click and whir ominously. Sweat beaded on both their foreheads as they worked to secure it in the cart, without triggering any of its safeguards. 45 seconds, the captain announced, reading the timer. Marcus, I want you to know that what you've done today, first warning me about the assassins, and now this. It's the bravest thing I've ever witnessed. The boy felt a warm glow in his chest, but there was no time to savor the praise. He grasped the wheelbarrow's handles and began to push, moving as smoothly as possible across the garden's stone paths. Every pebble seemed like a mountain, every slight crack in the pavement a potential disaster. Behind them, Captain Blackthorn was restraining the wounded assassin, but Marcus could feel the man's eyes on his back. He tried to block out everything except the need to move steadily, smoothly, toward the outer wall. 30 seconds. Marcus picked up his pace slightly, guiding the wheelbarrow through the palace's outer courtyards. Guards were running toward them from all directions, but Captain Blackthorn waved them back, shouting warnings about the explosive device. The outer wall loomed ahead, a massive stone barrier that had protected the palace for centuries. There was a small alcove near its base where the gardeners stored tools and supplies. If Marcus could get the bomb there, the wall might absorb most of the explosion's force. 20 seconds. His arms were aching from the effort of keeping the heavy cart steady, but Marcus pushed on. Just a few more yards to go. He could see the alcove clearly now, a perfect spot that would minimize damage to the palace itself. 15 seconds. Almost there. Marcus guided the wheelbarrow into the alcove and immediately turned to run back toward the garden. But as he spun around, his foot caught on an uneven stone and he stumbled, falling hard to the ground. 10 seconds. Boy, get away from there. Marcus scrambled to his feet, but his ankle was twisted, sending sharp pain up his leg with every step. He limped as fast as he could, but he knew he wouldn't make it far enough in time. That's when Captain Blackthorn did something that Marcus would never forget for the rest of his life. Captain Blackthorn dropped his sword and sprinted toward Marcus with a speed that defied his heavy armor. The boy was limping desperately away from the alcove, his twisted ankle slowing him down with each painful step. The captain could see the terror in the child's eyes, but also something else, determination to keep moving no matter what. 5 seconds. The captain reached Marcus just as the boy stumbled again. Without hesitation, Sir Edmund scooped the child up in his arms and threw both of them behind a thick stone pillar that supported part of the palace's outer structure. The explosion, when it came, was deafening. The ground shook violently, and chunks of stone flew through the air like deadly rain. The ancient walls of the palace groaned under the pressure, but they held. The alcove where Marcus had placed the device absorbed most of the blast, just as they had hoped. Dust and debris filled the air, making it impossible to see or breathe properly. For several long moments there was only silence, punctuated by the sound of settling rubble. Then gradually Marcus became aware of voices shouting in the distance. The sound of running feet and, most importantly, the steady beating of Captain Blackthorn's heart beneath his armor. "Are you hurt, lad?" the captain asked, his voice rough from the dust. Marcus wiggled his toes and fingers, testing each limb carefully. Apart from his twisted ankle and some scrapes from falling, he seemed to be in one piece. "I think I'm okay," he said. "What about you, Captain?" Sir Edmund sat up slowly, wincing as he moved. A piece of flying stone had struck his shoulder, and there was blood seeping through his uniform, but he managed a reassuring smile. "I've survived worse, boy, much worse." As the dust began to settle, they could see the damage the explosion had caused. The alcove was completely destroyed, leaving a crater several feet deep in the ground. The outer wall had cracks running through it, but it remained standing. Most importantly, the main palace structure appeared undamaged. "You did it, Marcus," Captain Blackthorne said with genuine admiration in his voice. "Your quick thinking saved not just the royal family, but probably hundreds of palace staff and servants." Before Marcus could respond, they were surrounded by royal guards, palace physicians, and various officials all talking at once. Someone wrapped a blanket around Marcus's shoulders while a doctor examined his ankle. Another physician was already tending to Captain Blackthorne's wounded shoulder. Through all the commotion, Marcus caught sight of the wounded assassin being led away in chains. The man's thin face was twisted with rage and defeat, but there was also something else in his expression. A grudging respect for the street boy who had ruined his carefully planned attack. "Sir Edmund." A new voice called out, and everyone immediately stepped aside. King Robert himself was approaching, flanked by his personal guard. Marcus had never seen the king before, and he was surprised to discover that the ruler of the realm was not the imposing figure he had imagined. King Robert was a man of average height with kind eyes and graying hair, dressed in simple clothes rather than royal robes. "Your Majesty," Captain Blackthorne began, attempting to stand and bow despite his injury. "Stay seated, old friend," the king said gently. "I've already heard most of the story from the guards. It seems we owe our lives to both you and this young man." The king's gaze settled on Marcus, who suddenly felt very small and very aware of his dirty, torn clothes. He had never been this close to royalty before, and he wasn't sure what he was supposed to do. "What's your name, son?" King Robert asked, crouching down to meet Marcus at eye level. "Marcus, your Majesty," the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus," the king repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, what made you risk your life to warn Captain Blackthorne about the assassins?" Marcus thought about the question carefully. He could have given a simple answer about doing what was right, but something about the king's genuine interest encouraged him to be more honest. "I've been watching people my whole life, your Majesty," Marcus said. "Living on the streets, you learn to tell the difference between good people and bad people pretty quickly. Captain Blackthorne is one of the good ones. He's always been fair to people like me, even when he didn't have to be. When I saw those men planning to hurt him, I couldn't just watch it happen." King Robert nodded slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "And when you saw the explosive device, what made you think of moving it rather than trying to disarm it?" "Sometimes when you don't have much, you have to think differently about problems," Marcus explained. "Rich people might have tools to take apart a complicated machine, but poor people learn to work around problems instead of through them." The king's smile grew wider. "Wisdom beyond your years, young Marcus. Captain Blackthorne, what would you say about taking this boy into service at the palace?" Marcus's heart nearly stopped. Service at the palace? Him? A street orphan with no family, no education, no prospects beyond begging and petty theft? Captain Blackthorne looked at Marcus with calculating eyes, but there was warmth in his expression. "Your Majesty, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, I believe this young man would make an excellent addition to the Royal Guard training program. He's demonstrated courage, quick thinking, and most importantly, loyalty to the crown. But I don't know anything about being a soldier," Marcus protested. "I can't even read properly." "Reading can be taught," the king said firmly. "Courage and character cannot. You've already proven you have both in abundance." Over the following hours, as physicians tended to wounds and officials investigated the attack, Marcus learned more about what had happened. The assassins were part of a larger plot orchestrated by a neighboring kingdom that wanted to destabilize the realm through fear and chaos. The leader, despite his wounds, had revealed nothing useful under questioning, but documents found on the other attackers provided valuable intelligence. As evening approached, Marcus found himself in a small but comfortable room within the palace walls. His room, he was told. There was a real bed with clean sheets, a writing desk, and even a window that looked out over the gardens where the day's drama had unfolded. Captain Blackthorne visited him before retiring for the night, his shoulder properly bandaged and his arm in a sling. "Marcus," the captain said, "I want you to understand what happened today. You didn't just save my life or even the royal family's lives. You saved the idea that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences. I still don't really understand why they wanted to attack the palace, Marcus admitted. Because they believed that making people afraid would make them weak, Captain Blackthorne explained. But what you did today proved the opposite. When good people stand up to evil, when they risk themselves for others, it makes everyone stronger. As the captain left and Marcus prepared for his first night as a member of the palace household, he reflected on how much his life had changed in a single day. This morning he had been a nameless street orphan with no future beyond survival. Tonight, he was the newest member of the Royal Guard training program, with a real home, real prospects, and most importantly, real purpose. But the most amazing thing wasn't the change in his circumstances. It was the realization that he had always been capable of heroism. He just needed the right moment to discover it. 6 months had passed since the attack on the palace, and Marcus barely recognized himself in the polished metal mirror hanging in his quarters. The scrawny street boy had filled out with regular meals and constant training. His hair was neatly trimmed, his clothes properly fitted, and his hands bore the calluses of someone who spent hours each day practicing with sword and shield. But the most significant changes weren't physical. Marcus could now read and write fluently. Thanks to daily lessons with Brother Thomas, the palace scholar, he understood military tactics, palace protocols, and even basic mathematics. Most importantly, he had learned what it truly meant to serve something greater than himself. The training program for junior guardsmen was rigorous and demanding. Marcus woke before dawn each day for physical conditioning, followed by weapons practice, academic lessons, and practical exercises in palace security. His instructors were tough but fair, and they had quickly recognized that the boy who had saved Captain Blackthorne possessed natural talents that went far beyond mere courage. "Focus, Marcus," Sergeant Hayes called out during sword practice. "Your footwork is improving, but you're still telegraphing your attacks. In real combat, that split second of warning could cost you your life." Marcus adjusted his stance and tried the combination again. His sword work had progressed remarkably quickly. His years of surviving on the streets had given him reflexes and spatial awareness that many noble-born trainees lacked. He could read body language, anticipate movements, and adapt to changing situations with an instinct that impressed even veteran guards. What set Marcus apart wasn't just his natural ability, but his motivation. While other young trainees might daydream during lessons or complain about the demanding schedule, Marcus absorbed everything with intense focus. He knew exactly how lucky he was to be here, and he was determined never to take that opportunity for granted. "Excellent improvement," Sergeant Hayes said, after Marcus successfully completed the difficult sword sequence. "Captain Blackthorne was right about you having potential." The mention of Captain Blackthorne brought a smile to Marcus's face. The captain had recovered fully from his shoulder wound and had taken a personal interest in Marcus's training. Their relationship had evolved from rescuer and rescued to something approaching mentor and student, though the captain was careful never to show favoritism that might undermine Marcus's standing with his fellow trainees. After weapons practice, Marcus hurried to his afternoon lesson with Brother Thomas. The scholarly monk had initially been skeptical about teaching a former street orphan, but Marcus's hunger for knowledge had quickly won him over. "Today we'll be studying the history of diplomatic relations with our neighboring kingdoms," Brother Thomas announced as Marcus took his seat at the small wooden table they used for lessons. "Is this related to the assassination attempt?" Marcus asked. He had learned that understanding the background of events was crucial to preventing future problems. "Very perceptive," Brother Thomas nodded approvingly. "Yes, the attack 6 months ago was part of a larger pattern of tensions that have been building for years. Understanding these relationships will be essential if you're to serve effectively in the Royal Guard." As they delved into the complex web of alliances, trade agreements, and territorial disputes that shaped the political landscape, Marcus found himself thinking about how different his perspective was now compared to his street days. Then, politics had been something that happened to other people. Decisions made by distant figures that affected his life but over which he had no control. Now he was learning that he could actually be part of the solution, part of the force that protected peace and stability. Their lesson was interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. A junior guard entered and saluted smartly. "Brother Thomas, Marcus, Captain Blackthorne requests your presence in the main briefing room immediately. He says it's urgent." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Urgent summons from the captain were never routine, especially when they included civilian instructors like Brother Thomas. Something significant was happening. They found the briefing room filled with senior guards, military advisors, and several people Marcus didn't recognize. Men and women in travel-stained clothes who had the alert, watchful look of professional scouts or messengers. Captain Blackthorne stood at the head of the room, pointing at a large map spread across the central table. When he saw Marcus and Brother Thomas enter, he gestured for them to join the group. "Gentlemen," the captain began, his voice carrying the authority that commanded instant attention, "we've received intelligence that concerns all of us. The assassination attempt 6 months ago was not an isolated incident. Our scouts have discovered evidence of a much larger conspiracy." He pointed to several locations marked on the map with red pins. Similar attacks have been planned or attempted at royal courts in at least 4 neighboring kingdoms. The pattern suggests a coordinated effort to destabilize the entire region. One of the scouts, a weathered woman with intelligent eyes, stepped forward. "Captain, the intelligence we've gathered indicates that the conspiracy reaches much higher than we initially thought. This isn't just foreign kingdoms trying to create chaos. There appear to be nobles within our own realm who are involved." Marcus felt a chill run through the room. Foreign enemies were one thing, but traitors within their own nobility presented a far more dangerous and complex threat. "What does this mean for palace security?" asked Commander Williams, the captain's senior lieutenant. "It means we need to fundamentally reassess our approach," Captain Blackthorne replied. "We can no longer rely solely on traditional security measures. We need intelligence gathering, counter-surveillance, and most importantly, we need people who can think outside conventional military tactics." The captain's eyes settled on Marcus, and the boy felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. He had a feeling he knew where this conversation was heading. "Marcus," Captain Blackthorne said, "your unique background and proven abilities make you particularly valuable in this new situation. You understand both the streets and the palace. You can move in circles where a traditional guardsman would be noticed immediately. Most importantly, you've demonstrated the ability to see threats that others miss." "What are you asking me to do, Captain?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. "I'm asking you to be our eyes and ears in places where we can't otherwise see," the captain replied. "There will be risks, and the training will be different from standard guard preparation. But if you're willing, you could play a crucial role in protecting not just our kingdom, but the stability of the entire region." Marcus thought about the boy he had been 6 months ago, hungry, homeless, with no hope beyond mere survival. Then he thought about what Captain Blackthorne and King Robert had given him, not just food and shelter, but purpose and the chance to make a real difference. "When do we start?" he asked simply. The captain smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features. "We start tomorrow, but Marcus, I want you to understand. This path will be more dangerous and more demanding than anything you've faced so far. Once you commit to this role, there will be no going back to a normal guard position." Marcus looked around the room at the faces of the men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting their kingdom. These were people who understood sacrifice, who chose duty over comfort, service over personal gain. 6 months ago, he would never have imagined being part of such a group. "Captain," he said with quiet conviction, "6 months ago, you risked your life to save mine when that bomb was about to explode. If I can help protect others the way you protected me, then I'm ready for whatever comes next." The room fell silent for a moment, and Marcus could sense the approval in the faces around him. These were seasoned warriors and tacticians, people who had seen enough of life to recognize genuine commitment when they heard it. Brother Thomas stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "If I may, Captain, I believe Marcus will need specialized education beyond what I've been providing. Intelligence work requires understanding of codes, languages, psychology, and cultural nuances that aren't covered in standard military training." "Agreed," Captain Blackthorne nodded. "Which is why we'll be bringing in additional instructors. Marcus, you'll continue your physical training with the guards, but you'll also begin studying with Master Chen, our specialist in observation and infiltration techniques." One of the scouts, a quiet man who had been listening intently, spoke up. "Captain, if we're going to use the boy for intelligence gathering, he'll need to learn how to blend into different social situations." Street knowledge is valuable, but noble courts operate by completely different rules. All valid points, the captain agreed. Marcus will receive comprehensive training, but we need to move quickly. Our sources suggest that whatever the conspirators are planning, they intend to act within the next few months. As the briefing continued, Marcus learned more about the scope of the threat they were facing. The conspiracy wasn't just about assassinating royalty. It was about creating enough chaos and instability to justify foreign intervention. If successful, it could lead to the conquest of multiple kingdoms without a single major battle. The beauty of their plan, explained the female scout, is that the captain's private office was a reflection of the man himself, functional, organized, and filled with the accumulated wisdom of decades of service. Maps covered one wall, marked with pins and notes that tracked various security concerns throughout the kingdom. A large bookshelf held military treatises, diplomatic histories, and personal journals from past campaigns. On the desk sat a single oil lamp that cast a warm circle of light in the evening darkness. Marcus, Captain Blackthorne began, gesturing for the young man to take a seat across from his desk. Your training has progressed remarkably well. Master Chen tells me you've mastered infiltration techniques that take most agents years to learn. Brother Thomas says your analytical skills rival those of scholars twice your age. Most importantly, you've proven you can handle the psychological pressures of deception work without losing your moral compass. Marcus felt a surge of pride, but also apprehension. Praise from the captain usually preceded difficult assignments. Thank you, sir. I've had excellent teachers, indeed you have, but now it's time to put that training to use. The captain opened a leather portfolio and spread several documents across the desk. We've identified the likely center of the conspiracy we discussed months ago. There's going to be a grand celebration in the capital city of Valdres, our neighboring kingdom to the east. Prince Alexander is getting married to Princess Elena of Southmere. It's being celebrated as a union that will strengthen the alliance between three kingdoms. Marcus studied the documents, which included detailed maps of Valdres, guest lists for the celebration, and intelligence reports about suspicious activities in the region. The problem, Captain Blackthorne continued, is that our sources suggest the conspirators plan to use this celebration as the stage for their most ambitious attack yet. With royalty from multiple kingdoms gathered in one place, a successful strike could destabilize the entire region. What kind of attack are they planning? Marcus asked. We don't know exactly, but we believe it will be similar to what they attempted here, designed to create maximum psychological impact while appearing to be the work of foreign enemies. The goal is to make it look like the kingdoms can't protect even their most important celebrations, thereby justifying intervention by the true masterminds behind the conspiracy. The captain pointed to a section of the map showing Valdres's palace complex. The challenge is that we can't simply warn Prince Alexander's security forces without revealing our intelligence sources. If word spreads that we suspect internal treachery, it could trigger the very panic the conspirators want to create. Marcus was beginning to understand his role in this situation. You want me to infiltrate the celebration and identify the threat from the inside? Precisely. Your background gives you unique advantages for this mission. You understand both criminal thinking and palace security. You can move between social classes without attracting attention. Most importantly, you've proven you can recognize threats that others might miss and take decisive action when necessary. The captain opened another document, this one containing what appeared to be a complete false identity. For this mission, you'll be Marcus Ashford, the newly appointed junior secretary to Lord Pemberton, a minor noble from our realm who will be attending the celebration. Lord Pemberton is actually one of our agents. He'll provide your cover and ensure you have access to the events where threats are most likely to emerge. Marcus studied the identity documents carefully. They were remarkably detailed, complete with a fabricated family history, education records, and even personal letters that established his fictional background. The beauty of this cover, Captain Blackthorne explained, is that secretaries are essentially invisible in noble circles. You'll be present at important meetings and social events, but people will barely notice you're there. You'll hear conversations, observe interactions, and have access to areas that would be restricted to obvious security personnel. How long do I have to prepare? Marcus asked. The celebration begins in 6 weeks. You'll travel to Valdres 2 weeks before the main events, supposedly to help Lord Pemberton with advanced preparations. That will give you time to familiarize yourself with the location, establish your cover identity, and begin your surveillance. The captain leaned back in his chair, his expression growing more serious. Marcus, I want you to understand the risks involved in this mission. You'll be operating alone in foreign territory, surrounded by potential enemies who won't hesitate to kill you if they discover your true purpose. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to help you immediately. Marcus had expected this conversation for weeks, and he had already made his decision. Captain, a year ago I was sleeping in doorways and stealing food to survive. Everything I have now, my education, my purpose, my future, I owe to you and the opportunities you've given me. If there's a chance I can help prevent the kind of chaos that would hurt innocent people, then the risk is worth taking. Captain Blackthorne nodded slowly. I hoped you would say that, but I needed to hear it from you. Very well then. We'll spend the next few weeks refining your cover identity and preparing you for the specific challenges you'll face in Valdris. Over the following days, Marcus immersed himself in intensive preparation for his first real intelligence mission. He studied detailed maps of Valdris until he could navigate the city blindfolded. He memorized the faces, names, and personal histories of dozens of nobles who would be attending the celebration. He practiced his cover identity until Marcus Ashford felt as real as his original self. Most challenging of all, he learned to think like a conspirator. Master Chen guided him through exercises designed to help him identify the kind of opportunities and vulnerabilities that enemies might exploit during a large public celebration. Remember, Master Chen instructed, the best attacks are often the ones that use the event's own energy against itself. Panic spreads faster in crowds. Security forces can be overwhelmed by multiple simultaneous distractions. The conspirators will likely try to turn them celebration strengths into weaknesses. Brother, Thomas provided Marcus with detailed briefings on the political implications of the various alliances represented at the celebration. Understanding the relationships between different noble houses will help you identify who might benefit from chaos and who would suffer from it, the monk explained. Follow the potential benefits and you'll often find the source of the threat. As his departure date approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much his life had changed. The frightened street orphan who had warned Captain Blackthorne about assassins was gone, replaced by a trained intelligence agent preparing for a mission that could affect the fate of multiple kingdoms. The night before his departure, Captain Blackthorne visited his quarters for a final briefing. Marcus, I want you to remember something important, the captain said. Your greatest strength isn't your training, though that's been excellent. It's your ability to see situations from perspectives that others miss. You understand what it's like to be powerless, which helps you recognize when powerful people are abusing their positions. Trust those instincts. I will, sir. Also remember that your primary mission is intelligence gathering, not direct action. If you identify the threat, find a way to communicate that information back to us. Don't try to handle everything yourself unless you have absolutely no choice. Marcus nodded, though they both knew that circumstances might not allow for such careful distinctions. Finally, the captain said, remember who you really are. You're not just Marcus Ashford, the secretary. You're Marcus, the boy who risked everything to save a good man's life. Hold on to that core identity no matter what role you have to play. The next morning, Marcus set out for Valdris dressed as a young noble's secretary, carrying carefully forged documents and a head full of secrets. As his carriage rolled through the countryside toward his first real mission, he thought about the split-second decision he had made in the palace courtyard almost a year ago. That moment had changed everything, not just for him, but potentially for the entire region. Now he was about to discover whether his actions would continue to ripple outward, protecting innocent people from those who would use chaos and fear as weapons of conquest. The boy who had once survived by staying invisible was about to use that same skill to step into the shadows and confront enemies whose ambitions threatened kingdoms. The game was larger now, the stakes higher, but the fundamental choice remained the same. Whether to look away from evil or to step forward and make his move, no matter the personal cost. As the carriage carried him toward Valdris and whatever dangers awaited there, Marcus knew with absolute certainty that he would make the same choice again. Some things were worth risking everything for, and protecting innocent people from those who would harm them was definitely one of them.